Good morning. One thing I've been noticing a lot is, you know how in times in life when you can be like, no, I'm enduring hardship right now, but I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And we all have moments like that, right? When we can start to feel like the stuff that we're doing, our training or whatever we're trying to get to, whatever place, whether that be mental or physical, you know, we have these moments where, the grind is starting to pay off. I can start to see inklings of the deposits that I'm putting into my character or the knowledge bases I'm building or the skills or whatnot. And I can start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And as I was just in church yesterday, I had this moment where I was listening to the message and I was looking around and I'd see all these people and I would think to myself, I wonder how many people here they come to this place, which is ideologically, it is a structure of hope, right? It is a place of hope. But where are they like mentally the other 6 days of the week? Like in some sense, that place, the church, is a place that that sheds light or that expels light, if that's the correct terminology. And when you're in a dark place, I mean, I've been there before myself where I just want to hear a message. I need to hear the word from someone that knows it in order to give me hope, right? And I'd be so caught up in trying to receive a message from another person that I'd never really understand the merit in finding faith in complete darkness, like where there is no light. I can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like it's dark. There is none anywhere. And there's times like that where nothing seems like it's ever going to get better. Everyone has that. And as I was listening to the message at my church, which it was a great message, it was, and this kind of attests to how God has a unique calling in all of us. So we perceive things differently based on where we are in our journeys. And just in any relationship, like people that steward relationships well, they understand. Like if you're mentoring somebody, for instance, you don't just unload everything on them all at once to learn. You don't do that because they'll just get crushed underneath the weight of responsibility or the weight of the tasks or the weight of everything that lies ahead of them in order to get to where they want to be mentally or skillfully or whatnot, right? And when I'm hearing a message, the stuff that sticks out to me, or even the stuff that I would say irritates me, which everyone has these predispositions or things that I don't know if irritation is the right word, but things that kind of like stick me inside. And I'm like, I don't know if I look at it like that, right? And because everyone else I was looking around, they were receiving something way different. And I was just thinking, there's a lot of messages that come from a lot of different places in our life, in our social circles where we go to for hope or for relief or from a break from what we're called to in order to avoid pain or avoid the influences of negative forces in the world, even our own minds, right? Just to escape ourselves. And I'm just like, what about the other 6 days or 5 days of the week? Sometimes people go to those places every single day and they never get anything done. And then when there's a moment of quiet, when they are by themselves, it's really dark. That's when there's no light. It's like, oh, this is how I actually feel. And I was just thinking, man, there's a lot of, well, in churches, for instance, a lot of messages have like this, like, good morning, Sharice, have this like rose tinted glasses esque type of messaging, which isn't wrong, but it doesn't it's not accurate to how we feel day to day, right? And it's really complex because we need things that we can hold on to for hope, but at the same time, we can't shield our eyes from the absolute realities of the world that some people in life and in this world have completely bad intentions. They're malevolent. People that have been through abuse, people that have had their mindset shifted to a place where they think humanity is terrible, or maybe they have like neural wiring crossing in their like neural network where they their brains just set up in a way where maybe they have narcissism or something like that, right? And they don't have good intentions. And sometimes I'm not in a place where I can just leave and go to a place of hope. There's no light at the end of the tunnel anywhere, or I'm at places in my life where it doesn't look like anything's really going to change. And I think that's like the actual true exhibition of like the true, hmm, those are events, those times in your life are where you exhibit true faith. And maybe, and I would say that the places that like bring you hope, like the structures in your life, God will use them to train you up to be prepared for moments when you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. You can't see anything because, well, for instance, post traumatic stress disorder, what that comes from is when your current understanding of the world gets challenged in a way that is just like mind blowing, and the way that you perceive the world and how things can be have just been turned on its head. And now you don't know anything, right? You don't even know how to interact with the world anymore because something has happened to you that has critically wounded your perspective of what's possible in the world. And it puts you in a place of fear. And you don't know what's real anymore, really. And I think we should be prepared for those times more. Like we should want to at least be comfortable in a sense where we believe we can make it through places and times in our life when I can't garner hope myself, but I can at least go through the motions of what I know or what I perceive God calling me to do, or what I perceive as myself knowing I should do deep down, just because the alternative is just to rot in the darkness, right? And that really hit me hard this weekend when I was just like listening to all those listening to the message. I was like, man, everyone's all like crazy right now. Not crazy, that's not the right word, but really hopeful, arms in the air, and that's amazing. But where are all these people like 6 days a week, right? Because I asked that because I used to be there. You know, I used to watch like 4 or 5 messages every Sunday and every message on like Wednesday. Or I'd go to certain places where we're like playing tabletop miniatures or going out on the weekends to the bars. I'd have these structures of relation these relationships within these like structures of hope, you know, which aren't wrong. It's not wrong, but it would more or less be an aversion to risk. It would be risk aversion where I'm just trying to avoid really dealing with everything in my head in my past rather than actually like running into it head first, which is what builds your faith more than anything. It's like it really, I don't know why I'm so stuck here. Maybe it's because of the book we're reading, because I'm going to talk about today how, you know, Lot's daughters, how they they got him drunk and had sex with him. And it's disgusting. It's really disgusting. It's really disgusting. And there's a lot of things in the Bible that are really disgusting and hard to talk about. And I think Everyone is like put on this earth to do something in their own unique way that God has purposed them to. But I really feel like there are some things that need to be presented in their true manner. That way, when you encounter actual malevolence in your life and actual disgusting things, it won't flip your perception of reality on its head and you'll be more prepared for it. Does that make sense? Charisse saying, I would dare say that I don't go to church for hope. If anything, sometimes it can make me feel more hopeless. That's true too. I absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So I don't know, Carlos, if you're in here, but we went to an event, right? Charisse, you were at this event. It was a self-development event, and someone that attended that event, it was a 3-day event. Well, I think it was 3 days. Somebody shot themselves in the parking lot. I don't know if everyone knows that, but it happened. They died. They were attending the event. You stating that sometimes it can make me feel more hopeless, especially when I see others in this happy place and I'm not. Absolutely. That's so good. I'm really glad you brought this up. Because yes, what if you go to church and there's all these people that are like raising their arms and they look really happy. They look really happy, right? They do. They all look like they're hopeful. There's a person standing and you see hundreds of people facing this person, listening to this person, gleaning motivation from this person, gleaning maybe even spiritual messaging from this person, from the Holy Spirit. Like God is channeling the message through them, right? You see that happening, but you're not picking that up. It's like all these people are getting something I'm not. I must be really messed up, right? I totally can relate to that. And that's probably why that guy shot himself at that event, because what if the messaging wasn't working? And then I would ask myself, well, why wouldn't it be working? And if I'm brutally honest, it's because it's so far away from everyday life that it makes people that are stuck in tragedy in everyday life, maybe even in their head, it makes it seem so in the distance, they can't even grasp it. They can't even see themselves taking another step towards it because it's so far away. You'll never get there, which is exactly what I'm talking about when I'm speaking to moments where there is no light at the end of the tunnel. It's just closed in. And that gets even more complicated if you believe the Bible to be true about what it states in regard to going to heaven when you die, because you're just like, well, what's the point of living? I'll just kill myself and just get to a better place, because I don't think this can be better in any sort of manner. That's hard. Sometimes I prefer to sit in my dark place. There's a non-Christian song like by Death Cab for Cutie. Yeah, I will follow you into the dark. That's a good song. And I like to think Jesus follows me into the dark. He does. That place, the places that I don't feel hope or have it, follows me there, and where I feel the hope, knowing that people won't follow me in the dark places, but Jesus follows me there. Absolutely. 100%. And this goes into what I'm going to read today, which is I'm just going to reread from Genesis chapter 19. This will be the last day, I think, that I'm in this little section here, which is good if you think about it from a content creation standpoint, which I've been so at peace with just coming on here and doing this the way that I'm doing it, because I'm just totally moving into I love just talking about psychology and all these things. I don't really have anyone else to talk to about them. So I'm like creating that vessel for it to happen. And I'm really excited about it. 'Cause I'm really thankful that you're here, Sharice, and anyone else that pops in all the time. I don't know if Vapor Alma might be here, whoever else it is. I'm going to be honest with you. This weekend, I'll read the text first and then I'll talk about it. Okay, so Genesis 19, chapter 19, starting from verse, oh, I put a crinkle on my page. Verse we'll start at verse 27. Early the next morning, Abraham, this is right after Sodom and Gomorrah got nuked by God. Lot and his family were instructed by the angels to leave Sodom and Gomorrah because they were going to raze the city. And I mean that in R-A-Z-E, in that sense. They were going to purge the existence of everyone there because the culture had devolved into a place that, I don't want to say irredeemable, but I don't want to say anything's irredeemable for God. But it was at least at a place where God wanted to use it as an example to send a message to the people that if you devolve into hedonistic worship, living that out, it is terrible for you. And him destroying that city was an exemplification of that, for sure. So these angels instructed Lot to go, and Lot got warned by the angels because he was a friend of Abraham. It states that God remembered Abraham. And so he saved Lot, and that's where we are. And his wife turned back while they were running away from the city, and she turned into a pillar of salt. So that sucks, which goes to show you that when God instructs you, you should listen and just go. And I guess, there are things that you have to be cognizant of what you submit yourself to, I suppose, which speaks to the merit of having places of hope and shielding yourself. I think it's a balance because too far one way or the other way, and things get all weird. So we'll start in verse 27, and I'll just read to the end again. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and returned to the place where he had stood before the Lord. He looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah, toward all the land of the plain, and he saw dense smoke rising from the land like smoke from a furnace. So when God destroyed the cities of the plain, he remembered Abraham and brought Lot out of the catastrophe that overthrew the cities where Lot had lived. Lot and his 2 daughters left Zor and settled in the mountains, for he was afraid to stay in Zor. He and his 2 daughters lived in a cave. One day the older daughter said to the younger, "Our father is old, and there is no man around here to lie with, as is the custom all over the earth. Let's get our father to drink wine and then lie with him and preserve our family line through our father." That night they got their father to drink wine, and the older daughter went in and lay with him. He was not aware of it when she lay down or when she got up. The next day the older daughter said to the younger, "Last night I lay with my father. Let's get him to drink wine again tonight, and you go in and lie with him so we can preserve our family line through our father." So they got their father to drink wine that night also, and the younger daughter went and lay with him. Again, he was not aware of it when she lay down or when she got up. So both of Lot's daughters became pregnant by their father. The older daughter had a son, and she named him Moab. He is the father of the Moabites of today. The younger daughter also had a son, and she named him Ben-Ami. Ben-Ami, I don't know how to pronounce that. He is the father of the Ammonites. So it should be Ben-Ami, I think. He is the father of the Ammonites of today. So I bring that up. I read that, and now I'll speak on how I believe this is like a depiction of when you are someone that is unprepared to encounter darkness and you find yourself in a place surrounded by it, surrounded by influences and people and things, and you're not prepared for it, it can really, really twist and contort the intentions for a person that God wants you to be. Like we see here earlier in the story when I spoke on this yesterday, and probably the first time too, it really stood out to me that Lot, his methodology for showing the angels kindness and saving them while they were in his house, saving them from the frenzied mob outside that wanted to rape them. His act of kindness, living in this town, had twisted his perspective of kindness in a way that he was going to put his daughters out and give them to the mob to rape or do whatever with. You assume it's rape because the mob wanted to have sex with the angels. So his act of kindness was to give his daughters away to the mob. You know how absolutely twisted your perspective has to be for that to be your act of kindness? And I mean, you could also have an argument for these were celestial beings, and perhaps he was looking that's rough. He was looking at this as his daughters were the sacrifice in order to keep the sanctity of the angels pure, right? In order for them not to be hurt, he was willing to sacrifice his daughters. I've never heard of it even depicted like that ever. Wow. Because God calls Abraham later on to sacrifice his son. Wow. Maybe that changes my mind on the passage. That's interesting. What do you guys think about that? That's hard. That's hard to think about. Shree says, I found an interesting article I found last night about happiness and psychology and the effects on our brain. See, I did my homework. I'm ready for a thoughtful conversation. Good. That's what this is about. What do you think about that? Lot could have submitted his daughters to the frenzied mob as a sacrifice in order to save them and keep them pure. I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know. I guess I would say that his faith in God to protect them all, or his belief in the power of God, and by extension the angels, must have not been very great if he would have thought that he needed to offer his daughters as a sacrifice. But then I would also say, well, that's what we do kind of when we is that kind of what we do when we tithe? We sacrifice a tenth of our finances in the hope that God will, in the knowledge that God will bless our financial influence and we can do more with less and whatnot. It's a signification of trusting him in that area of our life. I don't know. Maybe he believed that if he put his daughters out there, God would protect them. I don't know. That's crazy to think about. I've never heard of it discussed that in that manner before, ever. That kind of just blew my mind thinking about that. This is why I love doing this stuff, because I'm just like, that's wild. But nevertheless, the mob still shows. I think he was in desperate situation and he was only thinking about his own self-preservation, that he was willing to offer something precious to save himself. Perhaps, maybe, Maybe. That's what I thought too. I wonder I wanna read it. I did not intend on going in that rabbit hole today at all. Uh, blah, blah, blah. Where they called to Lot, this is the men before they had gone to bed, this is chapter 19, verse 4. Before they had gone to bed, all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. They called to Lot, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we can have sex with them." Lot went outside to meet them and shut the door behind them and said, "No, my friends, don't do this wicked thing. Look, I have 2 daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do what you like with them. But don't do anything to these men, for they have come under the protection of my roof." "Get out of our way," they replied. They said, "This fellow came here as an alien, and now he wants to play the judge. We'll treat you worse than them." They kept bringing pressure on Lot and moved forward to break down the door. It looks like "Look, I have 2 daughters who never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do what you would like with them." I read that, and my initial reaction is I think it's terrible. And I don't know what he was thinking. I would as I would say based on the events that happened thereafter where his daughters get him drunk and sleep with him, which is rape basically. It is rape. And, you know, they must have some contorted view of their father, obviously. But they've been living in this society, this place where their perception of how to handle bad things in life has been twisted. And it's probably because they never perhaps because they never encountered that degree of evil before. They never encountered it. They were alien to it. So it just, like, flipped their perspective, everything on their head, right? Because Lot used to hang out with Abraham, and you've seen, like, all these blessings from God run off Abraham onto him, and God must care about Lot a little bit. He saved him. And so I don't know what he was thinking. Therefore, I'm not going to say for sure what he was doing. But for the sake of the discussion, I'll just say that he at least was influenced in some way by him being in the center of this darkness, so to speak, theoretically. And if his faith, I would argue if his faith would have been greater, I don't think he would have offered his daughters up to do that. But I don't want to say that either because Abraham offered up his son. The scenario is different, but I don't know what he was thinking. Man, that kind of just blew my mind. I think I also think he had a little regard for their well-being that is so flippantly made the suggestion. It makes me wonder if I had made a similar suggestion before. Further, where the hell was Lot's wife? Where was she in all this mess? The other thing I think about is the angels. There's no mention in the text about them stepping in to protect the daughters. I feel bad for the daughters. They had no protection, but they did have protection the whole time. It's not like just God ceased to exist during any of this time at all. That's kind of my point today is like when you shield yourself from darkness so much, in a sense, those moments in time, like this could be a moment where there is no light at the end of the tunnel. We have this crazy mob outside that wants to rape these people, these angels that are a depiction of being good, right? They are purely good, you would think. Or at least Lot would look at them like that. because he's talked to Abraham before. He knows Abraham's, at least some sense of Abraham's relationship with God. He has seen God. He has seen God create blessings and things in front of their eyes, and he has lived in it before. Now, contrast that world with the world he's living in now. I wonder what that would do to you, your perspective of things. Go from living next to Abraham to living in Sodom and Gomorrah, a place that was so evil, God just wanted to nuke it, get rid of it. It was so evil that he debated on whether sharing with Abraham this whole thing. Good morning, Zephyr. God is there, but he did not step in. There was no intervention besides them not being destroyed. That is intervention, I would say. I don't know how. I would say that God's either in everything all the time and he's always there, like he's with us in the darkness, or he's not. So I would say if you disagree from a personal experience, I get that. It's but that's what I'm saying. That's why I think these things should be talked about. So the more you avoid them, the more they persist, and you don't really know what they rob from you at all, because your perception is just like skewed in a manner, right? Like, for instance, when someone reads the text that has had something happen to them from people before, being a victim, they can read that. And I would say the enemy would use that to make it so they can't pick up on some certain things, right? It's like our ability to submit ourselves and allow ourselves to be exposed to something speaks to our faith in God, and it speaks to our belief that he'll bring us through it regardless, right? And the act of pushing into things that are scary, doing that over and over again, that's what teaches you all the things that you can't really teach anywhere else. That's why I have such a big problem with, well, some of the messaging I hear from the churches and whatnot, because they don't really, I don't know if it's, I don't think it's wrong either, but because they're saving people all the time. I just don't think that churches are really preparing people for anything. But then I would argue, well, maybe that's not their job. It's other people's jobs, like this YouTube Live. They I've always thought this, like churches, like mega churches that are basically like salvation farms, are amazing. They need to be there, right? For people to accept Jesus as their personal savior and believe that he died on the cross for their sins, conquered hell and death. But what isn't really talked about is your life doesn't get easier once you're saved. Actually, all right, I'm just going to bother it. Carlos, if you're here, if you ever watch this, you're going to be like, bother it. All right. So I'm just going to be straight up. And this, Sharice probably like, oh no. Okay. So this weekend was the first time. And I'm going to go from a perspective of it was wrong of me. Well, my initial reaction was wrong. And it also speaks to how God changes our perspectives in order to build the person that he is calling us to be. Now, this weekend, after I got done co-leading the 4th through 6th grade class, I was in the message. I was in the pews listening to the message, and The message was amazing. The intention was amazing. It was about it was right on the ball for me. It was about how people should build a habit of getting alone with God every day. And I was like, hell yeah, that's sick. I'm all about that. And then there was a part in there where they used the verse, they used the verse, or they used the example of Jesus getting baptized. And they brought it up on the screen. And they said, even Jesus, after he got baptized, he went off to be alone with God in the wilderness. And I like stopped, and something like deep down in me was like, no, no, that's not what happened. That's not it. And I was like, what is that? So I literally pulled it up on my phone. Well, that's not my problem with it. He was led by the Spirit. Yes, that was true. That wasn't my problem. My problem was the verse on the sermon thing was wilderness dot dot dot. And I looked it up. I'll just look it up right now. Okay, so it says, okay, verse 16. This is Matthew chapter 3, verse 16. It says, as soon as Jesus was baptized, he went up out of the water. At that moment, heaven was opened, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove, alighting on him. And a voice from heaven said, this is my son whom I love. With him I am well pleased. Then it goes to chapter 4, verse 1. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. So I'm sure everyone can understand that watches this, or like you 5, 6 people, 7 people that frequent this thus far. You can probably understand my predisposition and how God's wired me, of what I thought about that, of that being left out. You can probably imagine what I was feeling, especially based on like what I've been talking about lately. And I was actually angry about it. So much so that for the first time in my life ever, I had like an imagery going through my head of myself getting up and walking out. Actually, now I thought about it, and I was like, and I would say, if you are someone that reacts to things like that, it's good to take a step back and to think about why you're thinking that way. Okay. And I did that, and I'm like, well, the reason I feel that way is because of how God has wired me, and how I am where I am right now in regards to mindset in my season, the current place in the journey that I'm at, right? And as a content creator myself, I know that I can say things that others will be offended by because of their perspective and how they were raised or brought up or what they've encountered. And that's not necessarily my fault. It's not. And the overall lying intention and purpose of the message was good. Okay? It was good. It was good. And the only reason I was upset is because of where I'm at right now. What I'm called to do is to, I believe, create a channel where we can like talk about these things and not shield our eyes from them in a way where it makes us so we're unprepared with the malevolence of the world. And we can do it as a community and together. And so you could technically say also it was true that he did get led into the wilderness to be alone with God. Kind of ish. Because I wouldn't say it's a lie, because we're always technically alone with God, because no one exactly feels the way that we do. So we're always alone. Always. And That's true. And I just totally agree with the message that everyone should like build up habits in their Bible every day. But I just share that because if you submit yourself to messages like that all the time and you avoid the darkness and the reality of the world, there will be some day when you will run into something that you are not prepared for, no matter what. And if you avoid things forever, and just as I've been talking about, if you have, say, a prioritization of just seeking pleasure and doing things that make you happy all the time, and you're risk averse, you avoid risk, you avoid suffering, even avoid those type of messages, you're not going to build the armoring that you need to in order to accomplish things that you need to do in life. And it's everywhere in the Bible that life's hard. Things are hard. Jesus got like ridiculed by his hometown. Lot, he was hanging out friends with Abraham. He had to split from him, and he ended up in a place where it just absolutely looked like it corrupted his way of thinking. He encountered things and experienced things that shifted his perspective in a way where the way he lived life and the way he thought about things was robbing him of the goodness of God, I would say. It was robbing him of the riches that can be attained when you stride forth in suffering and you increase your faith in the darkness when there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Does that make sense? It's not wrong. It's not complete. There's more to what happened. That's why it's important to open the Bible and read the entire passage. Sadly, the church has conditioned us to only read what's shown. Yeah, exactly. Because it said wilderness, ... But I agree. There's also merit to, just like I was saying, only giving people stuff that they can handle. Because if you give them too much, they will get crushed underneath the weight of the weight, the weight of the tasks, right? The weight of the work. That's why you have to incrementally increase your goals, like in right, like behavioral psychology. If you have any phobias with exposure therapy, you just like increase your exposure to the thing you're afraid of. You keep doing it. And then it's not decreasing your fear, it's increasing your courage. And I would say the same thing of faith. You increase the amount of darkness that you allow and expose yourself to. That way you're prepared when everything falls out underneath you, when you encounter things that absolutely flip your current understanding of the world on its head. That way you can actually get through it and you won't be crushed. Sometimes you're going to be crushed anyway. Look at Job in the Bible. He was said to have like the greatest faith or whatever at the time. There was like, he was a great man of God in his day and age. And he told the devil, hey, go test him. And he went through hell. And that was set up by God. It's like his own wife berated him for his belief in God during dark times. If you don't learn something from that depiction, then you don't want to learn. I think it's discouraging for me a little bit when a lot of people, I see everyone just seeking this feeling of good, happiness, and pleasure, and not even in a sense of like, it's like a negative habit like drinking or anything, but just seeking motivation from others that are really successful or what they perceive as having success or having something that they don't and they want, right? And they'll listen to people that have a big following because they believe they have some sort of hack or some shortcut in order to get to that place, which those people as well, the mentors the that sell programs and stuff like that, they'll tell you that, which it's also true. They're like, "Hey, I'm going to teach this to you. That way you don't have to go through what I went through." Right? So that's true. But also the Bible says that Jesus learned obedience through suffering. So I know a lot of us, we know deep down things that we can do in order to better ourselves, but we don't want to experience the suffering. We don't want to experience pain. This sucks. But that's what builds your faith. It is the willingness to experience things that we wouldn't necessarily ever recommend anyone else submitting themselves to out of care and compassion. That grows our faith in God to handle those situations for us. And I would say, like, God is, like Sharice saying here, but God is there, but he did not step in. There was no intervention. I would say he did intervene. The fact that they weren't like just the whole thing was intervention. The angels being there is his proof of intervention. He could have just nuked that entire town with Lot there, but he didn't. And man, I know things in my past, like for instance, this weekend I asked a girl out for coffee, and so that's good. That's me actually doing what I say that I am going to do. If there's anything anyone ever picks up about me from this channel ever, it's when I say I'm going to do something, I will do it. It may take me longer than what I think or what I say I'm going to do it by, and I may do it crying, I may do it bleeding, I may do it all messed up, but I will do it. I will either do it or die. I don't care. That is the way I am. That's how I'm wired. That is how I'm wired. I said that like I would go around when I said that I'm like on this journey to go find a wife. I will go and set a goal to like talk to X number of strangers a day, a week, or whatever, and then go do that. So I did that for like a week or two, and now I'm to the point where I'm just like asking women out, and that was, yeah, right. It's awkward. It's awkward, especially there's so much connotation around it nowadays. There's a statistic that said, in the past year, men ages 18 to 30, 50% of them have not approached a woman in real life in the past year. And that says a lot about things, right? About the state of our society right now and the belief in people. It's really crazy. And you can take from that what you will. But I'm just saying it's hard, right? I was afraid of doing that. I was afraid the whole time. And I was afraid, and I lead there, right? So I'm in this position where I have a reputation or something of sorts to lose. And I already admitted to myself, it's like, well, I'm going to be perceived as creepy by at least some portion of people, no matter how I act, because of what they have experienced in their lives before I was there and maybe when I'm there. Because what I do, they're going to see it as something that isn't okay with their little framework of their understanding of the world and their perception. And it's going to fall outside of that. And I'm going to be looked at as a creep. Therefore, my role and my reputation at that church may be blemished, right? There may be some blemish marks on there now. And that's fine. I already know that. But I know that what's the alternative is what I ask myself. The alternative is I stay alone forever. And where am I going to meet women that believe in God? It's going to be at the church, right? So either if God has someone out there, which he knows the future, I believe he does. I believe I'm going to be married. I believe my wife is going to be married to me. Therefore, if that is true, then not only am I not acting on what is good for me, but I'm not acting on what is good for my future wife if I don't go out and like ask people to coffee, something really simple, right? And I'm willing to sacrifice my perceived reputation. I'm willing to sacrifice my comfortability. I'm willing to sacrifice the feeling of being perceived as this strong leader that doesn't make mistakes, because I'm going to get nervous and say things that are really stupid. But it's whatever, you know? And there'll be times, I'm sure, in the future where, like, I'll want to approach a girl and I'll just chicken out. Maybe. I'm sure it will happen, right? And but if I didn't expose myself to that discomfort, I would never do it. Ever. And then I would end up going into next year, not experiencing that. And even though I can get so busy with other stuff and be comfortable, even though I can take my mind off of it, of my desire to have a wife or to not be single for the rest of my life, if I avoid that forever, it will spiderweb out into my life everywhere. It will. It absolutely will. Absolutely. Right? So I have to, like, embrace that darkness a little bit, you know? And I have to be okay with people thinking ill of me or me making mistakes. And I have to be okay with other people making mistakes, right? What if someone is rude to me when my intentions are okay? I can't take it. I can't. It would not be correct of me for me to think of them as a terrible person, right? At all. So that's an example of that. Does that make sense? And it's hard. Does anyone have any thoughts about that? Or maybe not like that scenario specifically, but just like being comfortable with being uncomfortable and submitting yourself to that. Because, that fight or flight system that's psychologically wired in our head, it's like been in us forever, right? We see something, we don't want to experience it. We avoid that. So it's there for a good reason. Just like I was giving the example yesterday of like touching a hot stove, or something like that. You want to pull back. But if you do that too much, then if someday you get trapped in a place that's really hot, not only are you going to be really hot, you could have an anxiety attack, you have a heart attack, whatever, I hope that makes sense. Um, that's complicated, that issue of Lot submitting his daughters. We don't know what he thinks. That's interesting. I might need to think about that more. And did anyone think about what I asked them yesterday in regards to moments in time where they prioritize seeking pleasure rather than experiencing the fullness of the situation? And that means intaking the bad with the good. If anyone did, let me know. I'll give you like a couple minutes. Yeah, man. I don't know what to do about how leaders offer up they offer up their knowledge bases and they present it in a manner where it will teach you things, but experience is the greatest teacher. And I would argue that your mistakes that you make are specific to you and how God made you. And therefore, you running into things and falling over and getting hurt from making mistakes that you make from your mind is the best way to learn and to fix you. Not from learning from others' mistakes. That's good. But learning from your own mistakes is so much more valuable because there's little idiosyncrasies in the mistakes that you make that are specific to you and specific to your calling and how God called you. It's like I see so many people learning from others and gaining motivation from others and learning from others' mistakes and avoiding making mistakes themselves because they're afraid of walking into darkness when that's what they need to do in order to learn. Does that make sense? It's like there's some other people can't make my mistakes for me. There's some mistakes only I'm going to make. That I'm so foolish in some areas of my life right now because of the things that I have experienced. There's only some things that I need to learn in the weird ways that I need to learn them, right? And that takes a lot of self-analyzation and whatnot. And I'm not saying that no one should ever have mentors. No one should listen to anybody. You should always do that. But you should not rely on that 100%. You should walk out yourself and slowly expose yourself to being uncomfortable and to be willing to experience the suffering in life and prioritize God at the top of your belief hierarchy in a manner where he can get you through any area of life, no matter how bleak it seems, where it's like, I can't even hear him right now. If you've ever been through something completely terrible that makes no sense and there's no reason why you're experiencing it, it doesn't seem fair, then you'll understand what I mean. When there's some rooms you can go into mentally where it's so dark, I feel like I can't even hear God. If you've been there, you know. I just want to encourage you. He's always there. He's watching. Sometimes he's watching you in your silence to see what you'll do. Jesus got led into the wilderness right after being baptized, right after the Spirit fell on him to be tempted by the devil. And Jesus was the perfect exemplification of interfacing with this world. 100% man, 100% God. So what do you think God does to you, to us? Our entire existence is for relationship with him. He cares about us. Something to think about. I'm going to wrap it up there today. And I love you. And I thank you. And for next time, I don't know. I know that I seen in the story next time that Abraham, he tells someone that his wife is his sister again. And it's like, that just goes to show you, like, people make the same mistakes over and over, even the man of the greatest faith in that current age and time in history. Right? Have a good day, everybody. And I will see you. I will be on, Friday. Right? Friday. Yeah, much love, Zephyr. Thank you so much for popping in. I hope, was this good? Did you get anything from this? What did you think about this? What did you get from it? Real quick. I want to know. I'm interested. What did you hear? I'm not leaving till you tell me. I'm going back today. I'm having a full day today. I'm like busy all the way till like 7:30. It's been really awesome for me to change my rest days from Sundays to Saturdays because I found when I was serving the church, it was not a rest day. Serving is not rest. We are never ever alone or abandoned by God. True. I'm good with that. Don't be afraid of darkness. Look in the Bible where God has submitted people to it to grow them, and he will get you through it. I love you, and I thank you. I will see you all Friday, 8 a.m.-ish. You have a great rest of your day, great rest of your night. Peace. Thank you.